You could order from the catalog and have them ship it to wherever you want, anywhere in the United States.
After more than 100 years in business, Sears files for bankruptcy. What it means for the retailer's future. The mayor prepares to release his final city budget before leaving office. A look at what's in it. Could profits from public assets like Midway Airport help fund Chicago public pensions? The former mayor of Highland Park thinks so. A recent study shows 2/3 of American millennials have not heard of Auschwitz. A priest and a Holocaust survivor are trying to change that. Bradley Tusk served as deputy governor under Rod Blagojevich. Now he advises tech startups. What was it like working for the now imprisoned former governor? And a new exhibit coming to the Field Museum tells the story of how beer helped transform the city. All that and more next on Chicago Tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brandis Friedman. Accusations fly in the governor's race. Amanda Vinicky has that story and more of what's making news in Chicago Tonight. Amanda.
Democrat J.B. Pritzker has the backing of the labor movement in his bid for governor, but the Chicago Tribune reports he used non-union workers for a $25 million home renovation. Republican Governor Bruce Rauner is calling Pritzker a hypocrite.
Mr. Pritzker has made a big issue in this campaign that he's all about union workers. He advocates for them, supports them, and it's clearly a phony, clearly a fraud on this. He doesn't care about union workers. He cares about himself.
Union leaders say Rauner is trying to cripple them by advocating for policies like right to work and by withholding step wage increases from certain unionized state employees. The Pritzker campaign says JB had minimal involvement in managing the renovation and shared a statement from the head of the AFL-CIO, praising Pritzker as a champion of working families. One of convicted Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke's attorneys is trying to raise money for Van Dyke's family. Earlier this month, Van Dyke was convicted of murdering Laquan McDonald. He's yet to be sentenced, but will likely spend years in prison. The lawyer who started the GoFundMe page writes that amongst the multitude of struggles she has already faced in the past 4 years, Jason's wife, Tiffany Van Dyke, is now left to raise their 2 children on her own. At last check, contributors had given nearly $50,000 to be used for the girls' daily living, like food, transportation, clothing, and school. When you want answers from the U.S. Postmaster General, what do? Send a letter, of course. U.S. Representative Mike Quigley says Chicago residents have called his office all year with complaints about missing mail, damaged mail, and other mail delivery problems. Quigley says the U.S. Post Office previously assured him the problems would be addressed, but they persist. Among his questions for the postmaster, why are there so many auxiliary routes, and is there enough local post office staff given the increase in high-rise and condo buildings? What are the chances the pool of candidates for mayor will include a chart-topping, Grammy-winning indie artist? We may find out tomorrow. Chance the Rapper kicked off a fresh round of speculation with a simple tweet this afternoon. He wrote, "I'm thinking maybe I should." That mirrors a recently released song which features the lyric, "They screamin' Chano for mayor, I'm thinking maybe I should." Chance the Rapper, whose real name is Chancellor Bennett, later tweeted, "City Hall pull up," with notice of a press conference on the mayor's race. Then again, it may all be a savvy way to grab voters' attention so he can endorse someone else for mayor. As for the weather, clear tonight with a low of 33 degrees and a warning to gardeners of widespread frost. Then tomorrow, sunny and breezy with a high near 55. And don't forget, you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook and YouTube via podcast and the PBS video app, as well as online at WTTW.com/news. Now, Brandis, back to you.
Thanks, Amanda. After more than 100 years, Sears Holdings, the parent company of Sears and Kmart, is filing for bankruptcy. Some say it's the Hoffman Estates-based retailer's last chance for survival. And since the news broke, several people have been sharing their memories of shopping at the store once dubbed Where America Shops. Among the sympathizers is President Donald Trump.
When you look at that whole filing that they did last night, to me is very sad. Somebody that is of my generation Sears Roebuck was a big deal, so it's very sad to see.
And joining us to discuss what the bankruptcy filing could mean for the store's future is David Shaper, National Desk Correspondent for National Public Radio in Chicago. David, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So what is the latest?
Well, Sears had a big debt payment due today, $134 million. Couldn't make it, so it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy to reorganize, to kind of protect itself. Chapter 11 is a little different. Some folks were thinking it would have to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which would have required the company to just liquidate and sell off all its assets and be done. This keeps the chain afloat for a little bit longer. They will be closing some more stores. But a federal judge in New York, a bankruptcy court judge there, just late this afternoon, approved the initial stages of that bankruptcy filing. So the company will go on. Some stores will still be open, but more will be closing, and the bleeding continues.
So how did Sears get to this point?
Well, Sears was, a remarkable company for a long, long time. It was Amazon long before the internet, a century before the internet, with its mail order catalogs and using the railroads and the postal service to deliver products to customers. But in the beginning in the 1970s and into the 1980s, it started falling behind others. Really, I've heard from some retirees who feel like the building of the Sears Tower was kind of a pinnacle moment. Sears was trying to be everything to everyone, and it built this, huge Taj Mahal, this kind of homage to itself with the Sears Tower. And some feel it started becoming too big for its britches and wasn't aware of some of the trends that were coming on, certainly in the 1980s, while it was still expanding into credit card businesses, real estate with Coldwell Banker, a brokerage firm, Dean Witter. They were still trying to be everything to everyone, and consumers were starting to move to discount retailers like Walmart and big box stores for specialty products like Home Depot and Best Buy and things like that. So they're getting beat at some of their own game, tools and home improvement things, electronics, with televisions and hi-fi equipment and that sort of thing. And it was slow to respond to that, and then the internet came along and further took customers away.
So what is the retailer's plan from here on out? You said it'll stay afloat for a bit longer.
It'll stay afloat. This reorganization plan gives the company the financing it needs to keep about 500 stores open, and this includes the Kmart chain, which Kmart was actually the merger or version of Sears can survive for the longer term. But if what's happened with other retailers like Carson Pirie Scott and Company and others, Toys R Us, have happened before, the future doesn't look too bright.
How did Sears get its start? How did it end up in Chicago?
It's an interesting story. There was a guy who was a railroad ticket agent in Minneapolis named Richard Sears, who was processing a shipment of watches for a jeweler who didn't want them. So he bought them and turned around and started selling them himself. It was successful, so he started a little watch business. A year later, he moved to Chicago from Minneapolis, teamed up with Alva Roebuck, who was a watchmaker. And they started with jewelry, and gradually it went into other products, created a catalog. In 1893, they became the Sears Roebuck Company. And it just took off from there. There's a great deal of growth in the early part of the 20th century, and it became this ubiquitous store that meant so much to so many people.
Those catalogs, like the Christmas catalog, they were, kind of iconic. Where does Sears stand in retail history? Because a lot of people are calling it, Amazon before there was Amazon.
Right, and it really was a remarkable company. I mean, they saw the Christmas season as a boon for retailing long before many others. And the Christmas catalog, which I believe started in the 1930s, at a time this country was going up and down financially and going through depression cycles, they saw a way of providing, low-cost products to people who all around the country who needed them. They saw the curve coming ahead of it when they started putting more stores in downtown areas and cities, and then following consumers out to the suburbs in the post-World War II era, where Sears stores really became the anchors of the shopping malls and allowed the shopping mall experience to take place. They just kind of fell behind the times and were still wedded to that sort of shopping mall experience in far-flung areas. And when the consumer tastes and demands started changing in the last 2-3 decades.
And we're almost out of time, but what kind of responses have you been hearing from people today?
People are have very romantic notions and are reminiscing about the heyday of Sears and going with their mom and dad. I was thinking about the tough skin jeans and corduroy pants that we used to get when I was a kid. But the truth of the matter is, you start asking people, well, when was the last time you were in a Sears? What was that experience like? And those who have been to Sears haven't been happy with the products that they've been offered for the most part. And a lot of folks just honestly haven't been to Sears in quite some time.
All right, David Shaper from NPR, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
As more than a dozen folks line up to succeed him, Mayor Emanuel is set to release his final city budget before leaving office. Now, he's promising no major tax or fee increases, but there are significant new costs. How will they be paid for? Paris Schutz has the latest. Paris.
Brandis, it's sort of a calm before the storm type of budget, although there is a projected $211 million deficit in this budget. And as you mentioned, he is saying no new taxes, fines, or fees, or at least major fines or fees to pay for this. And for the last 4 years, homeowners have been socked with $550 million collectively, or in total property tax hikes. So they're going to get a reprieve from that this year. That's all over. And this, as you mentioned, is the last budget before the mayor leaves office. But the next regime will have to tackle an extra $1 billion and counting of pension payments starting in 2021. So back to this budget. It's a $10.6 billion document. There are $25.7 million in new costs as a result of the Chicago Police consent decree and new police hires and new police technology upgrades. So that's in addition to the typical police budget. There's also $1.3 billion in pension costs this year, $7.7 million in new youth mentoring costs, among many other things. And as you see there, a deficit that'll total about $211 million. That's not very big compared to the first deficit that he had inherited, which was around $600 million. So the mayor will give his budget address on Wednesday in what has traditionally been a speech that sort of touts his accomplishments before City Council rather than really look ahead to specifics to solve the problems of the future. There will be a month or so of hearings before City Council gets its heads together and approves a final budget.
So what about that $10 billion borrowing plan that had been floated to help defray the massive $28 billion pension debt?
Well, this sort of just went away, didn't it? I mean, this was something that was floated about 2 months ago, and we kept hearing that there was going to be a decision on this any day now, but it has been put on hold, even though Chief Financial Officer Carol Brown says she would recommend the mayor pursue this project, this $10 billion borrowing, provided that it's the right time, that they can get good rates. But the mayor's decided that he would rather wait to get this budget process done and then make a decision on that $10 billion. And at least one alderman we spoke with today says he believed this should be the death knell for that idea.
Yeah, and if you look at what happened over the last week or so with the interest rates going haywire, if we had had this thing in place a week or a month ago, it would have gone south for us and it would have been really bad for taxpayers, at least in the short term. And you know, these things, they say they basically straighten themselves out over a 30-year period, but it shows you how fraught this is with the dangers of the market.
Also today, mayoral candidate Paul Vallis, the former school CEO, gave his financial blueprint a test run with the City Club audience. He's calling for more money from Springfield. He's calling for a 5-year comprehensive budget plan, a cut of legalized cannabis revenue should that pass. He's saying the city should see at least 50% of that revenue that the state would get if marijuana becomes legal. And he wants the city to take advantage of a new provision in the federal tax law that allows for opportunity zones for low-income and minority communities. This was a part of a very little talked about part of the Republican tax bill that passed several months ago in Congress.
Okay, budget address on Wednesday. Thank you, Paris.
That's it. All right.
Now to Eddie Aruza with another view on how to tackle the city's massive pension debt. Eddie.
Brandis, a government policy researcher and former North Suburban mayor, has an idea for paying down Chicago's $28 billion and growing pension debt. He proposes transferring city-owned assets such as Midway Airport or its water system or even real estate into the pension fund. A practice, he points out, is common in the private sector. And as Paris just mentioned, this comes as Mayor Emanuel is suspending for the time being that $10 billion pension bond proposal. So is asset transfer a way to address the pension crisis without going deeper into debt? Well, joining us is the man behind that asset transfer proposal, Michael Belsky, Executive Director of the University of Chicago's Center for Municipal Finance, and he was also mayor of Highland Park from 2003 to 2011. Michael Belsky, welcome back to Chicago Tonight. Good to have you here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So give us some details of your proposal. How does it work?
Well, the idea in the proposal is not something that's proprietary to us. It was brought out in connection with as an alternative to the pension bond proposal. As you mentioned, the private sector has in the past contributed assets to pension funds. So you have this liability, and you take an asset, you put the asset into the fund, it reduces that liability, and therefore the payment that you have to make to meet future obligations. If you have an income-producing asset, after you manage for example, a water system, you manage the system, pay its debt, keep it maintained, any excess revenue could also go towards making the pension payment.
And some other public sector municipalities, public sector around the country have done this. So explain who's done it and how it's worked.
New Jersey contributed their lottery to their pension fund. It brought their funding from the 30s up to 50%. It also lowered the payment they had to make. They were able to free up money from their general fund that they were putting towards the pension, towards education, and all the other things that get crowded out in places like Illinois because of the pension payment, because of an $8 billion pension payment. In addition to that, in Australia, a toll road was contributed to a provincial government's pension. And in Ontario, the teachers own the lottery up there. A teacher's pension fund owns the lottery in Ontario.
Okay, so but what does it mean? For example, if one of your proposals is to put Midway Airport as an asset into one of these pension funds, what does that mean? Does the city sell it? Is it gone for good?
No, what happens is the asset gets transferred in kind, so it's given to the pension fund. It needs to be managed, so the pension trustees, just like they hire investment managers, could either have the government continue to manage it or have a private operator manage it. And it keeps operating, providing services as if it were not in the pension fund. The theory behind it is that the pension trustees are going to want to maximize the value of that asset, so they're going to be very careful about how it's managed and maybe even do a better job than if it were just strictly in the government's hands.
And so in terms of paying off the pension debt, they have this asset. Do they get all the profits from the asset? Is that how it works?
Well, they would get excess cash flow after, I wouldn't call it profit, excess cash flow after the asset's been maintained and its debts have been paid. So yes, there would be, to the extent that there is excess cash, it could be paid towards making the pension payment.
I'm sure some viewers are already feeling jittery about this idea as they remember the parking meter deal. Some would call it the parking meter fiasco, or maybe the sell-off of the Skyway. Is this something identical or similar to that?
Well, you have to, when you transfer the asset in, you don't just make up a number. You have to have it valued. And under federal law, it has to be an arm's length transaction because obviously the city and its pension fund are related parties. So you have a independent appraisal. Maybe at the time of the parking meters, this had not been perfected, but the whole public-private partnership movement in the country of taking assets and having them operated on long-term leases, there's been a lot more progress in understanding how to value these assets. And you would have to get an appraisal and then settle on a value that you would put into the fund.
And so you said it's an independent appraiser who will give it its valuation.
Right. You can't. You have to have a arm's length transaction with an independent appraiser.
So what did you think of the mayor's bond proposal?
Well, pension bonds have been used by numerous municipalities in the past, and the risk you take is similar to the asset transfer. You're taking the proceeds of the bond issue, the $10 billion, you're putting it in the pension fund and therefore reducing the liability. Now you have debt outstanding and you're making debt service payments. What you're banking on is the earnings on the $10 billion will generate enough money to make those debt service payments. So what they're assuming is about a 7% return on the pension funds, and their debt service payments will be about 5%. If they're wrong, the taxpayers are then on the hook. And we've studied several of the state pension funds around the country and looked at, what are the reasons they're being underfunded. Some is they're just not making the payment, but a big factor was the expected rate of return versus what they assumed was way off. So I think there's a big risk, and plus you're taking on more debt. You're obligated to make those payments.
At this point, does the city have $28 billion worth of assets that you think would go into these pension funds, or do you think that it should only be a portion of how the city pays down its debt?
We've never viewed this as a silver bullet. If you look at places like New Jersey, it brought theirs from 40 to 53%, not 100%. So it really depends on the value of the assets. If you look at the Skyway, it was $1.8 billion. I think the Indiana Toll Road was $4 billion. So it will help reduce the burden, but there will be other things needed to address the issue.
You, of course, have received some criticism about this plan. I'm sure that you're aware of that. Among them is that pension boards are not qualified to manage these kinds of assets, but you say that it could be a deal whether it's a pension board or the municipality that continues managing it, and that, unlike what you assert, public assets transferred could very well be liquidated by the pension board to pay the benefits, meaning that we would never get it back, that right. It would be, if Midway Airport is handed over, could very well be that it's liquidated and it's never going to be in the hands of the city again. So what about that argument?
Those are two very legitimate points. Number one, as to the management, the trustees today don't manage the actual assets. They hire investment managers to manage the assets. So in the same way, they would be selecting someone that would manage day in and day out, and they're
qualified to manage these kinds of assets.
Right.
A water system and in a large airport.
Right, and it could be, as I said, it could be the government itself, or they could go out and get somebody else to do it. There have been privatizations of airports and water systems, not only in this country but around the world. So we wouldn't expect the trustee to be knowledgeable about managing the system.
And what about that liquidation argument?
Well, I think if you start, it depends on the sort of assets you put into the pension fund. If you have something that's an essential purpose monopoly, something like a water system, or close to monopoly, like an airport that's very critical to the city, it's unlikely it's going to be liquidated, but because it's a necessary service. But in the event that something catastrophic happens in the fund, this is becoming sort of a movement where I think you're going to see more of this. The pension fund could sell the asset back to the city at a fair market price, or they could sell it to another pension fund, or they could sell it to a private party.
So there's no guarantee that it would ever come back, is what you're saying.
Right.
You've also been advocating for the state to look at this kind of proposal, because the state's pension debt is far greater than the city.
Right.
What would the state have to offer?
I mean, I think, what Connecticut and New Jersey are looking at are their toll roads. The state toll road would be a great asset. Unfortunately, with the lockbox amendment, it might be difficult to do that.
And the lockbox amendment is in Illinois, and what does that state?
And it says any dollars coming in for transportation purposes have to be used for transportation purposes, so you couldn't divert any money towards the pension.
So Connecticut and New Jersey's pension obligation is far less than what Illinois has at this point. Is there anything really that Illinois could offer under a plan like yours?
Well, the lottery would be similar to New Jersey, certainly the lottery, but you can also contribute land. They might own land that could be increase in value or be developed and then and once it's redeveloped, sold. So those sorts of things can be contributed as well.
Michael Belsky, thanks so much for coming in this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And there's more Chicago Tonight ahead, so please stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the City Club of Chicago.
Smart people may disagree about what makes a great city, but part of what makes Chicago great is that we don't have to agree. To run a city like ours, a lot of issues come up. The City Club of Chicago is a place to debate those issues and hear from the men and women who shape the policies, lead the industries, and tell the stories that define our city. For the free and open exchange of ideas, the City Club of Chicago.
Still to come on Chicago Tonight, a recent study revealed 2/3 of millennials have not heard of Auschwitz. A priest and a Holocaust survivor are trying to change that. And a new exhibit coming to the Field Museum highlights how beer and the immigrant experience intersect in the history of Chicago. But first, to Amanda Vinicky and the former Deputy Governor of Illinois. Amanda.
He went from running communications for New York Senator Chuck Schumer and working in the New York mayor's office to becoming Illinois' deputy governor for Rod Blagojevich at the age of 29. Now he's known as Silicon Valley's government fixer, helping tech firms like Uber navigate and survive tough political waters. His new book is The Fixer: My Adventures Saving Startups from Death by Politics. Venture capitalist, former Illinois deputy governor, and now author Bradley Tusk joins us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and let's talk about your time working for former Governor Rod Blagojevich. In your book, you don't hold back on your feelings, saying that Rod possessed none of the skills, work ethic, discipline, integrity, or focus to perform any real work once he won office. What do you mean by that?
I mean, I think it says it pretty clearly, but here's what's really interesting about Rod. Which is he saw, and this is both crazy and logical, if you follow me here, which is running for office and holding office is two totally different jobs. In his mind, his job was to win office, and he would literally say, I did my job. I'll see you guys again in 4 years. And everything that happens in between to him was not really his responsibility or his problem. And look, in a lot of ways, that's an extreme view of it, but lots and lots of politicians, pretty much everyone I've ever worked with except Mike Bloomberg, tends to view governing as the means to the end of getting attention, getting validation, being relevant. Rod was that on like steroids times 1,000. But ultimately, he just had this view that his job was to be a politician. It was someone else's job to run the state. Turned out that someone else was me, which I didn't expect to happen. But it made for a really interesting and chaotic 4 years.
So that's disconcerting on so many levels, looking across government. But in Rod Blagojevich's case in particular, this is where he spent his days jogging, taking extra long showers instead of...
He was in great shape, yeah. I mean, because he would call me a lot during the day. So he would okay, I'm going to stretch now. I'll call you back. And he'd stretch. And call me back and say, now I'm going to go for a run. Okay, I had my run. It was 8 miles. This happened, that happened. Good for you. And then, I'm going to shower. And then basically,
so you knew where he was at.
I knew at all times. It wasn't hard. He didn't carry a cell phone. You didn't need it. You knew where he was. He was very well read. He would read these long biographies of Napoleon. He had no clue what was in the state budget, but he could tell you, or for example, the slugging percentage of everyone on the Cubs roster at that moment. So he had interests. They just didn't involve governing.
And in particular, you once had to personate him on a call with Homeland Security. Tell us briefly about how that occurred.
It was I found disconcerting. So this was early 2003. So we're only a year and a half or less removed from 9/11. And I was in New York during 9/11, so I was obviously pretty impacted by it and moved by it. And Tom Ridge, who then was Secretary of Homeland Security under Bush, would assemble, 8 governors at any given moment. And once a month, once every few months, they do a drill. It's just, if this type of thing happens, let's make sure everyone knows what to do. Reasonable, right? And certainly a good use of half an hour of anyone's time. And there was one schedule that included Illinois. And Rod at this point already had stopped coming to the office. I said, you know what? He's got to be in this call. I'm going to go to his house because it's like in Ravenswood, because I've got to make sure that he's on this call. So I show up at his house, but unbeknownst to me, that morning he found out about a letter that Dick Mell, who was his father-in-law and former alderman and ward boss, had sent out saying, I'm having a fundraiser and Rod's going to be there. Which on one hand, kind of innocuous, like Rod's son-in-law, why wouldn't he be there? On the other hand, for Rod, it was just like embodiment of everything, all of his frustration with Mel. That you know, everyone thought he was Mel's puppet, and Mel put him where he is, and he wasn't an independent person.
And
so
here's
like
proof of that in his fundraiser.
And all of those insecurities and all of that frustration comes pouring out in the form of just rage, right? So he is yelling and screaming and calling everyone he knows who gives money to politicians and ordering them not to give money to Mel, and it's going nuts. And I'm trying to staying away from him because like this is not a fun situation. And I finally say, hey, you know, we got to get on this call now. And he said, well, what call? And I said, you know, Tom Ridge, why do you think I'm here, right? And he said, I'm not doing that. I said, yeah, you have to. It's Homeland Security. It's Ridge. It's 8 other governors. And he said, no. And I said, so you're telling me that a fundraising letter from an alderman is more important than national security? He said, yes. So this point,
he said yes. Yeah. You asked him that, and he said yes.
Yeah. So this point now, I was just going to try to like call and explain it, make up some emergency. But the problem was I spent so much time fighting with him. Let's say the call was at 10:30. Now it's like, by the time I dialed, it's like 10:31, and they've started. So now it's Ridge, it's other governors, and it's too weird for me to be like interrupt the whole thing to sort of make up some ridiculous excuse for Rod. So he's going around, you know, Governor Daniels, do you authorize the National Guard? I do. And so finally gets to Blagojevich, I'm just like, so I deepen my voice, which Rod's voice wasn't even deeper than mine. It didn't make sense. It was just like when you're a kid, like impersonating an adult. I said, yes, I do. And
nobody knew a thing.
I was so relieved when no one said, who is this? And my name, you know, his name never came up again on the call. And it ended, and I kind of looked over, and he was still screaming at Chris Kelly or someone about the fundraising stuff, and I flipped out the back door. And
he never asked what occurred on the call, and never seemed to care.
Didn't matter.
So given that, why did you remain?
It's a really
why
good
did you stay
question.
working for him?
You know, it's funny. So I was the second deputy governor. The first guy, Doug Schofield, a really smart, decent guy, I'm sure you remember Doug, was an adult. And after 6 weeks, he said, this is not a feasible, rational thing that an adult does. I'm out of here. One of the reasons that at the age of 29 I got that job was because they knew I was so young, it was such a career-making opportunity that I would put up with a tremendous amount to have that kind of opportunity. I oversaw the state's budget, operations, legislation, policy, and communications. It's a lot to do. So I kind of looked at it first and said, well, there's this incredible opportunity. Anything really great is hard. I'll have to work through it. And then what it became is, look, someone's got to run the state. Like, maybe I'm not the best equipped person to do it, but I'm the one in the job. I'm willing to show up 7 days a week. I'm willing to work 18 hours a day. I'm willing to put in all the work. And he's not, so I got to do it. And I felt an obligation to do it, and I did it for 4 years.
You mentioned that you were the one who ran the budget,
Yeah.
and yet there are many people who blame the Blagojevich administration for getting into Illinois and part of the fiscal mess that it's in terms of, for example, the pension application bond, skipping pension payments.
Yeah.
Do you
shoulder
the blame?
Probably some of it, yeah. Look, I think that we did certain things. We tried, I remember, to do a really big pension reform in the second year, the third year, and the General Assembly wasn't having it at all, and they rejected all of it. We really did want to get rid of effectively, to go from the defined contribution to defined benefit and really change the entire system. But we failed, right? In the same way that I take credit for things that we succeeded at, like open road tolling or universal health care for kids, universal preschool for kids. You know, I have to take the blame for things that we didn't succeed at. So I know that we put the effort in to try to improve the system and reform the system, but I also know that we didn't succeed at doing it. And that's part of the reason why Illinois is in this mess today.
Now, given that Blagojevich was this absentee governor and you were the one that was running the state, presumably you worked with House Speaker Michael Madigan.
I did.
Was he really the one who was running Illinois?
No, because he was, state government sort of ultimately gets divided into two things, legislation and the operations. So Madigan had nothing to do with the operations. That was all the people who just directed every IDOT or whatever, right? And generally pretty good people who were doing their job. But on the legislative side, absolutely. I think Madigan sometimes found it frustrating that we came forward with very robust agendas because from my view, what's the point of being here if we're just going to do what's always been done? What's cool about government is the ability to come up with an idea that you think could change things and improve things and try to make it policy. So on one hand, a lot of frustration over that. On the other hand, because Rod never actually showed up to negotiate the budget, Madigan and I ended up working really well together. I learned how to deal with him, and I understood what he cared about, and he really cared about preserving his majority in the assembly. He cared about his daughter and her career. He didn't care that much about policy one way or the other. And so if you could respect the parameters that he cared about and that he needed, you could do a lot of stuff. So over time, I actually felt like it got easier and easier to work with him. He and Rod obviously never saw eye to eye. And there were things about their relationship that I was sympathetic to Rod about, and there were probably other things about it that I was sympathetic to Madigan about.
You mentioned innovation. With Illinois now largely in your rearview mirror, you've gone to help startups navigate the world of politics. How does government strangle innovation and technology?
The biggest risk ultimately is just pay-to-play politics. So take taxis and Uber as the typical example. I started working with Uber and investing in Uber back in 2011, and taxis are a really rough industry. It's effectively a cartel. And the taxi industry really done very little to improve its product over a 30, 40-year span. Uber wouldn't have been so successful if there wasn't such pent-up demand for it, and the demand was there because the underlying entrenched product was really bad. And so we come into the marketplace, and we're offering people a different way, and what taxi said in every market in the U.S. was, you can't do this, not because of any actual legitimate policy reason, but because it's bad for us. You're taking away our market share. And taxis, what they were good at was giving campaign contributions and hiring lobbyists, and they would try to pressure all of them to say ride sharing is not legal. We had to fight in every single city in the U.S. to make it legal, and the way we won was that we were able to mobilize our own customers, regular people who just liked the idea of having this other option and didn't want it taken away from them. And over a couple of years, millions and millions of people advocated via Twitter or email or calls or letters or whatever it was, saying, don't shut down Uber, don't shut down Lyft, whatever it was. But it took that kind of force to overcome taxi, right? You see it for Airbnb and hotels. You see it, Lemonade is a portfolio company of ours. They offer low-cost renters insurance. The insurance industry certainly had no interest at all in having them involved. So in every single case where you're disrupting an entrenched interest, whoever has market share uses whatever political power they can to try to stop you from succeeding.
And one of the ways that you next want to disrupt government is through online voting.
Yes. So this is something I'm doing out of my foundation. I'm going to give you a slightly long answer, so just interrupt me when it gets to be too long. But I've learned three things. One is, in my time in government and politics, with the exception of Mike Bloomberg, every single politician I've worked with or for desperately can't live without the validation that comes with holding a foreign running office. That relevance is what means everything to them. So they're only going to make their decisions based on the inputs they're given, which is who votes in their primaries. Primary turnout in this country is abysmally low. You'll get to 10, 12%. And so as a result, that's who they listen to. So we're so polarized because the far left or the far right votes in the primaries. The districts are gerrymandered, so as a result, that becomes effectively the general election. So if you're a Republican congressman from Florida, you probably know an assault weapon ban is not a bad idea, but if turnout's 12% in your district and 50% of those people are NRA members, you're not doing it because you're not going to get reelected. Now, if turnout becomes 60%, all of a sudden then the NRA's vote share goes from 50% of your electorate to 10%, and you're going to do it because the rest of your constituents want it to happen, but you're only going to make decisions based on the inputs you're given. And what I found in Uber and FanDuel and Bird is people who will never vote in a primary, even though the primary is happening, will advocate politically if they can do it from their phones and if they have a compelling way to do it. And the third part of the stool is blockchain, which enables you now to do this type of work in a lot safer way.
Even with Russian hackers?
No one has, there's not a single hacker that I've seen that will say they know how to hack blockchain. Do I think one day someone will figure that out? Absolutely, but we're nowhere near that right now.
Thank you so very much, Bradley Tusk. I appreciate your being here. Again, the book is The Fixer, My Adventures, Saving Startups from Death by Politics, and you can read an excerpt on our website. Now, Brandis, back to you.
Thanks, Amanda. Here is a stunning statistic. 2/3 of millennials don't know what Auschwitz is. That's according to a study earlier this year reported in the Washington Post. And 22% of those surveyed said they had not heard of the Holocaust. Auschwitz, of course, was the largest concentration and extermination camp built by the Nazis. 1 million Jews were killed there, along with 100,000 others. Today in Chicago, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, based in Washington, held a fundraising event at which they honored our next guests. For more than 40 years, Father John Pawlikowski has been active in urging Catholics and others to confront the long history of Christian anti-Semitism. He was appointed by President Jimmy Carter to be a founding member of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council, which guided the creation of the Holocaust Museum in D.C. And Kurt Goodfriend was born in Austria in 1938. At age 4, his father and grandfather were murdered by the Nazis, and he and his mother went into hiding. They were eventually caught and sent to Theresienstadt concentration camp, where they were held until liberated in 1945. Thanks to you both for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Kurt Goodfriend, you were quite young when you went into hiding. You were taken to Theresienstadt in 1943. It was different from other concentration camps, correct?
Correct. It was not an extermination camp. It was a holding camp. Most people got there, stayed 2-3 months, and then were shipped off to the east, Auschwitz primarily, and killed there.
But you and your mother ended up staying there for 2 years instead of 2 or 3 months.
Yes.
That was uncommon.
Yes.
Why was that?
I think it was because my mother was splitting mica. Mica is a mineral that was used in the 30s and 40s for electronics. And so basically she was a slave labor for the Nazis because they were working on some radar. And I think that's the reason that we stayed there for 2.5 years.
It was also a different kind of camp in that it was a model camp?
Yes. In 1944, the Danish government asked to show them what the camp looked like. And they picked Theresienstadt because it was not an extermination camp. They beautified the things there. They showed the Nazis what they did there, and then they made film on that, a propaganda film. After the propaganda film, most of the people that were in the film were sent to the Auschwitz and killed.
Father Pawlikowski, why is it important for Catholics and other Christians today to acknowledge the history of anti-Semitism?
Well, anti-Semitism was profoundly impactful in the history of Christianity. The late Father Edward Flannery, who wrote the first sort of book called The Anguish of the Jews on the history of anti-Semitism in the Catholic Church, estimates that approximately 1 million Jews lost their lives over the centuries as a result of the teaching of contempt, as it was known. And so that's one, I think the Church, in order to be a moral leader today, has to acknowledge the darkness over the cross, as some people have referred to anti-Semitism. Secondly, I think we have to be all religious institutions, but I would speak of my own Catholic Christianity, need to become a firewall in this era against social hatred, because social hatred is on the rise, and unless it's combated, it's not going to disappear, or at least be mitigated. And so I think all religions have a responsibility to try to counteract it, and we need to know the history in order to help counteract it.
How concerned then should we be about that statistic that I just quoted earlier, that so many young people haven't even heard of Auschwitz?
I think we need to be very concerned for two reasons. First of all, the historical one, but it's not just the historical one. I think understanding the Holocaust, and especially if one looks at the current major exhibition for the 25th anniversary of the museum that is on display in Washington, Americans in the Holocaust, a great part of it is focused on immigration and how also German society, which many regarded as one of the most sophisticated democratic societies yet produced, crumbled in a few years without any military action, without any real internal revolution. All sorts of institutions just gradually acquiesced to what Hitler was proposing.
And Kurt Goodfriend, there are not many survivors left.
No, I mean, we're a dying breed. I mean, this is the last time that kids can meet a survivor.
And there are obviously bigger implications beyond, just remembering the Holocaust. Elie Wiesel talks about remembering for the future as well.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on, or your reaction to so few people, so few young people knowing about the Holocaust, when at the same time we're losing so many survivors?
Well, we're lucky here in Illinois. It's one of the few states where Holocaust is a must study for children in school. I think there's only 16 states. That's the reason the statistics are so bad that you mentioned before. And we have to be concerned about that.
Father Pawlikowski, the U.S. Holocaust Museum, the Memorial Museum, and the Illinois Holocaust Museum, they focus on other genocides as well.
Right, and going back to what you already said, Elie Wiesel's sort of motto for the museum, remembering for the future, is very important there. And there's a Chicago, deep-seated Chicago connection, because in the original legislation, the idea of creating a committee on genocide was implanted in the legislation. However, for various political reasons, it never got off the ground for a number of years until the Clinton administration, and the Clinton State Department encouraged us to try to create a committee on conscience. And that committee was largely the work of 4 of us from Chicago who were then on the council: myself, Ambassador John Kordek, Harold Gershowitz, and also Leo Melamed, the founder of the Mercantile Exchange. And so that we really got that going, and it's now become a major center, a major think tank on questions of genocide in Washington, D.C.
So some people have drawn comparisons between President Trump and the earliest days of Nazism in Germany. Having known and studied that time so carefully, and obviously Kurt Goodfriend knowing it personally, do you see that as overblown rhetoric, or is there reason to be concerned?
There's reason to be concerned. I want to keep it at that.
Okay. Father Pawlikowski?
There's great reason to be concerned because when an essential ingredient of democracy is a free press, and when President Trump refers to journalists as the enemy of the people, I think he's really creating a situation that could easily escalate into an outright attack on a group of people who fulfill one of our constitutional objectives in terms of the American democracy. And this is true in other parts of the world. So actually our speaker, the Nazi procurator whom we saw by way of video because of illness at the luncheon, in the recent film by Michael Moore, makes that comparison very directly.
Okay. Father John Pawlikowski and Kurt Goodfriend, thank you both for joining us.
My pleasure.
And we're back with more Chicago Tonight in just a moment. Liz Garibay is the author of the popular History on Tap blog, creator of the History Pub Crawl series, and the driving force behind a push to create a Chicago Brewseum that would highlight and celebrate the role of beer in the city's history. She's also one of the creators of a new exhibit coming to the Field Museum called Brewing Up Chicago: How Beer Transformed a City, which aims to tell the story of Chicago's urbanization and immigrant experience through the lens of its brewing industry. Here now to talk about all of this is historian, Chicago native, and beer lover Liz Garibay. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So where did your interest in the city's beer history come from?
You know, I've always been a fan of sitting in a bar and having a conversation with people around me. And, you know, I really found a lot of value in a lot of the old timers who were there, right? They've been sitting there 30, 40, 50 years, saw people come and go, see neighborhoods change. And I realized that there was some serious oral history happening there. So I started to collect some stories and write things down. And then I also realized that they had been sitting there for 30 or 40, 50 years drinking. So how much of it was fact and how much of it was fiction? So I started doing research on my own. I found myself in various pockets of museums and research centers and libraries to extract some of those stories. And next thing I knew, I just started to really look at history through the lens of alcohol because of that.
So what was the role of German immigrants in creating and developing Chicago's early beer industry?
Well, the Germans who arrived in our country, were some of the very first European immigrants to be here. And in the Midwest, that certainly is a major story. If you think about cities like Chicago, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Cleveland, we all have a very strong German heritage, and it's because of that early German presence. And so, lucky for us, they also brought a lot of their skill sets, and one of them was beer making. So it was really this amazing time where their arrival, their presence, and their industry really helped create the beer industry.
So why the Germans? Why not like the Irish or the Brits or another immigrant group?
They just happened to be here early on, and again, if you think about history and you think about beer, Germans are certainly a major player in that industry. And beer became such a big player for us in our country that naturally other immigrant groups found work in that industry, either as working in breweries or as tavern owners. So it literally had a little bit of everything for everyone.
What were those first saloons like, and how important were they to those immigrant communities?
So by the time a lot of these immigrant communities came through, we're into the 1830s, 1840s, and there are simple places, but they also had some ethnic flavor. Ethnic bars were really important community spaces. If you think about being a foreigner, right, in a new place, you want to be with like people who look like you, people who talk like you, people who eat like you, people who celebrate like you. It's a shared culture, and there's a value in that. And it also is something that provides you with comfort in this new land. So ethnic bars really were these community spaces, community centers, and I like to also call them the original Facebook, right? These are places where you would share information, get some gossip going, get the best gossip around town, or if you knew that you were going to have a relative coming to the country, you might need to find him or her work. And so this is where you would do that.
So how were those taverns, those saloons viewed by others who were less enthusiastic about beer than the immigrants?
By the mid-1800s, we have a little bit of tensions arising between folks who'd already been here for a while and these immigrant communities. And so you really have, if you think about these immigrants who arrive, they're, again, just being themselves, right? Having that their culture is part of who they are, and they're celebrating their culture. And so beer and food and parties are sometimes a part of that. And you already had, on the American side, some folks who really didn't understand those cultures and the differences, and so they posed a threat. And you also had folks, of course, who were anti-alcohol, the temperance movement folks. So you have the anti-immigrant political party combining with the anti-alcohol temperance parties, and they're just sort of gaining up on these immigrants who are working in the alcohol industry, just trying to make a living. So tensions arise, and it really is a moment in our city history, in our nation's history, where we start seeing a lot of political change, a lot of really the beginnings of activism in our city.
So you've been working on a new exhibit set to open at the Field Museum called Brewing Up Chicago, How Beer Transformed a City. How did beer transform Chicago?
Well, like all those things we just discussed, you see the changes that happen with the arrival of new people, and really how a lot of these groups who are really kind of being exposed to one another for the first time, trying to figure it out, trying to grow up together, trying to build a city and grow up with their city. And, in the mid-1850s, we're talking about these tensions that happen. There's an incident that happens where it really is the beginnings of Chicago's movement towards political activity in terms of trying to just fight, right? Take a stand. And so there's a moment of civil unrest for the first time ever in our city. And these immigrant groups organized to sort of fight against people who are trying to change their lives. And the folks stay organized, and voting happens, and things change. And that really kind of is sort of the pattern for the rest of the 19th century.
Craft beer these days is having a bit of a renaissance.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, now we're not really into the revolution as much as we are into the evolution. Craft beer really started to pop up in a sense. It got its beginnings in the mid-1960s and the 70s, and we really started to see sort of pockets of it pop up in various parts of the country. In the late 80s, Chicago here, our very first one, Goose Island in 1988, that's still around, really started to take off in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And now we have about 6,500 breweries in the country, which has surpassed our all-time high.
All right, thank you. This is a story you want to drink up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Liz Garibay, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. And Brewing Up Chicago, How Beer Transformed a City opens at the Field Museum on November 2nd. And that's our show for this Monday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing and join us tomorrow night live at 7. The PBS NewsHour's Judy Woodruff on the midterm elections and the state of journalism in the U.S. And behind the facade of this old apartment building lies Chicago's latest architectural marvel. We go inside the new gallery space called Wrightwood 659. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Closed captioning for this program is brought to you by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices. Bob Clifford is on the board of overseers of the Rand Institute for Civil Justice, a think tank in California.